Welcome back to Class Action. I'm Jessica Aguirre. We're very fortunate here today to have Congressman Mike Honda with us. Mike has really made education a focus in his work on Capitol Hill. And this is interesting because you were a high school teacher, science teacher. Your wife was a teacher as well.
Right.
So that means that you have inside knowledge of how the teacher profession works. So we want to talk about the issue of teacher evaluations. Hot button issue. We've talked about it so many times on this show. And what I think makes it difficult too is because people feel they have to side on one side or the other, either with the unions or against it. Unions, and I know you have strong union ties. So given that, where do you fall in line with the concept of teacher evaluations? How do you think it should be handled? And are we ready for teacher evaluations?
We're ready to come up with a system of teacher evaluation that's going to make sense, it's going to be fair, and it's going to be based upon improvement rather than punishment or rather than, and it's like instruction. We want to teach youngsters and we want to improve their learning through quizzes and tests and not use them as a way of punishing them or making them feel like they're inadequate. I had a boss that said in my first principal meeting that I want you to come back to the next principal meeting with a hit list. What the hell's a hit list? It's assuming that teachers cannot learn or, So, let's stop. Let's apply to teachers as we apply to youngsters.
So what kind of system would you like to see in place? Do you want to see test scores as part of that? Do you want to see how the student performance is? What do you think? Do you want to see more mentoring? Do you want to see more active principals being in the classroom and being able to evaluate the teachers? If you could make up an evaluation system, what would you put forward?
I think all those things are important, including student feedback. I think youngsters are very, very critical and generous in their feedback on
But are they qualified to be able to rate their teacher?
Sure they are.
You think so?
Yeah, they have an affective response because affect is very important in terms of readiness and openness. If you're afraid of a teacher, it's more difficult to learn. It's more difficult to ask for help. So affect is very important. And I think one of the best models I've had was a fellow by the name of Pete Mesa had worked at Stanford and worked at Mills College, and he developed a teacher instructional improvement process where the principal had to be involved in it, and it was a team approach, and a principal could not evaluate or judge a lesson plan or a lesson that was given by a teacher until that principal gave the same instruction in concert with the teacher.
So you can get a deeper knowledge and understanding of how it's being handled.
And then you could help each other in looking at what expectations did you have, what learning outcomes did you were looking for. And so it's very, very scientific, and it's based upon every child in the classroom. And how was my technique in checking for understanding? And when I asked whether the youngsters understood, was it a negative approach? Does anybody need any more help? You need to ask the question, checking for understanding, without making a child feeling like they're going to be stupid if they ask the question.
Now, here's another twist that's happening with evaluation. It's actually spinning it on its head. In Florida, they're considering passing legislation that would allow teachers to then grade the parents of the students, evaluate how much the parents are bringing to the table in terms of preparing the student to go to school, participating in the classroom. How do you think the public would respond to that here in California? And would that kind of put teachers and parents on a more even level where they could evaluate each other? Because, sometimes a lot of parents just don't show up, the kids don't do the homework, and teachers try to hold people responsible. But, if you were facing unsatisfactory, satisfactory, or excellent, you might really kind of pony up and do a little bit more work and help your kid.
Yeah, teachers already do that. They already judge parents based upon the first few weeks of instruction and interaction, or lack of interaction of parents.
But should we be allowing them to give you a checkbox?
They do that in their heads anyways, and they form that judgment. The more important thing is understanding how much work is the parent doing outside of the classroom, outside the context of what we see. Just because a parent doesn't show up, there's a myriad of reasons why. How many jobs do they hold down? Are there other children at home? What about us going to the home? You know, when I was my first stint as a principal, before school started, I visited every home that whose children were going to that school. So I saw every parent before school started. Some of the parents greeted me and says, "School hasn't started yet. My kid couldn't be in trouble yet." I said, No, I just came by to meet you and come up with an understanding that I'm your child's partner in their discipline, but you're the major partner.
It's a teamwork.
And you're my partner in your child's education, but I'm the major responsible person.
Let's move over to the topic of tenure. A lot has been said about tenure, especially here in California. Tenure, obviously, teachers get tenure after 2 years, and then they have a system of due process which allows them not to be just dismissed from a school. But some people complain that it gives teachers a lifelong job. What do you think about tenure right now? There are some moves to change tenure and take that away from some of the teachers. It's being done in some states. How do you see it here in California?
Well, tenure is a technique of protecting teachers against, administrators or superiors that probably don't have a good attitude. And it's a good time for us to look at it now and see if there's time to change that technique and see if there's a better way now, so that it's respecting the teacher and respecting their talents and their potential. At the same time, looking at the responsibility of those who are part of the evaluation process. So you take out the politics, you take out the biases, and I think that it's a good time to do that. My wife was a 30-year teacher, and she hated all the stuff that went on, but she benefited from the kinds of gains that teachers have had since the 60s to the present time. And like any institution, it needs to reinvent itself to be appropriate for the time. And perhaps I think now is the time that it's an appropriate time to look at tenure and protect teachers, but enhance instruction.
Let's talk about the budget. Jerry Brown has said that there will be no cuts to K through 12 education as long as a June ballot measure goes on and that it passes, and that would extend temporary taxes. Do you see that as the right move? Do you think that that's going to happen? And how would you rate how Jerry Brown is doing so far when it comes to education?
Smart. I mean, it's smart. I mean, he's taken responsibility of bringing more resources to the schools by asking the parents and asking the public, what do you think? And usually when you give the public the responsibility and tell them how much, where it's going to go and how it's going to be spent, I think they feel that that's a better handle.
And the ramifications, if they decide not to, you can decide not to, but this is what my alternative is going to be.
Right. And right now it's that time, and I think that that's a smart move.
I know you have grandchildren yourself. When you look at, one is in second grade, is it right? And you have 2 more coming up that'll be in elementary school in the next couple of years. When you look at them and you see the state of education in California, do you think things are going to get better and that they're going to get a good education eventually? Or do you worry about the state of education for your own children? Because it's very personal when you look at it from your own children and your grandchildren.
Sure. I think my grandchildren will do fine. Because we know what it is that we need to do. I think that as a policymaker, I have a great concern for the institution and the system, because it's not every child's getting that kind of help, attention, for a lot of reasons. And I think that constitutionally, it's my responsibility to be concerned about that and do the best I can. Because if we say we want, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and we want to have a more perfect union, this is one of the ways to do it. And all children do not come to our schools equally, but they're not the problem, they're the challenge. We become the problem when we don't face that challenge appropriately. And as adults and as educators, we have to do that in concert with parents and also with the right focus on each child. And so my policy language changes all children to each child. We focus on each child, then we will be able to reach the needs of all the children. What parent is going to say, I don't want my child to be special? Right.
And on that note, Mike Kondo, we thank you very much for being here. We thank you for the work you're doing in Washington on behalf of all the kids
in California.
Thank you. We'll be right back.